of difficulty with that in terms of utilizing a filibuster, but even moreover, just obeying the rules. For example, health care. You want to see that repealed? There's two tracks. I'm already on record. My old colleague Jim DeMint, now South Carolina's junior senator, introduced the Repeal Act. I announced the day it was introduced that were I in the Senate, I would have been an original co-sponsor. I challenged my opponent to do the same. Uncharacteristically, he did sign on to the bill, but without a lot of attention. I think it was the night prior to the start of a holiday recess. Very quietly he signed on. But understand, and we can talk more about the repeal and how to handle that, and freely acknowledging that hindsight is 20/20, understand this as well. John bragged the other night on the debates that the Republican leadership had let him lead the fight against Obamacare. Well, he left one important tool out of his arsenal. When the bill was brought to the floor by Harry Reid, and those, I see Karen here and there and others who have served in the Senate, Lucky, the procedure is this. The majority leader brings the bill because he controls the schedule. The presiding officer, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, says the clerk will report the name of the bill. The Senate reading clerk reads the name of the bill. Then the leader asks, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered as read and open for debate at this time. Had you had a Senator Hayworth, you wouldn't have been treated to one of my verbose exchanges. It would have just taken 4 words. I would have stood and said, Mr. President, I object. And the clerk would have started to read. And he would have read and read and read some more, probably for the better part of a week. And because we now know that that noted locker room lobbyist, Rahm Emanuel, was ensconced up in Harry Reid's office writing the bill as it was being debated, well, just imagine in your mind's eye, the reading clerk comes to a page devoid of text. Section 233, blank. Now, even though the networks are in the midst of a slobbering love affair, apologies to Bernie Goldberg, that was the title of his book, even with their undying affection for Barack Obama, they would have had no choice but to cover this because it would have been on C-SPAN 2, gavel to gavel, and that would have been the point. When the American people, regardless of how they felt about the president or their partisan strife, would go, whoa, wait a minute. You mean they're debating something that's not even written yet? And that could have been the turning point. But instead, you heard from my opponent, well, that would have delayed it. Oh, really? That's inaccurate on a couple of counts. Number one, there was a special election in Massachusetts, and Scott Brown, before he got all mavericky, might have been that 41st vote that would have kept it off the floor to begin with. But moreover, just to fight it. And I'm not exactly sure of the scheduling. I'm sure the McCain people are here with a calendar to try and explain how I'm wrong about this. But in the broader sense, to stand and fight. But you know the problem with so many of our guys in Washington? The culture beats them up. You've seen the article in the Daily Caller where the journo list, where the guys on the left all get together and develop talking points for the left. They've given way from legitimate press coverage to being propagandists in many cases for the other side. Present company here accepted, I'm sure. But look, you got to be willing to stand and fight. But what happened to our guys? I could see them in caucus or in conference. They're going, well, they've got the votes, and it is Christmas, and we all want to go home anyway, so let's just let them go ahead. But when we come back, we'll make them vote on raising the debt ceiling. Yeah, that'll show them. Excuse me. With the runaway spending under Barack Obama, and with the possible exception of Blanche Lambert Lincoln, do you think any of those Democrats had any heartburn about voting to raise the debt ceiling? Of course not. But here was what was afoot. And it's where our guys get worn down. All the cable news reporters were out from the White House doing stand-ups as follows. Jane, President Obama and his family have delayed their Hawaiian Christmas vacation to remain in Washington and monitor the Senate proceedings on health care coverage. Had you had a Senator Hayworth in Christmas time 2009, the Obama family would have discovered the wonders of the Yuletide at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and the United States Senate would have been in session because there are things worth fighting and worth fighting for. All that out of an innocent query about the 17th Amendment. Well, there you have it. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Mesa all my life. You recall what you said about McCain when you said, I was misled. I would hope the same thing would happen to him as years old as I am. Remember George Romney running for the presidency, changed his mind on something, and admitted he said, I was brainwashed. I wish the same thing could happen to McCain that happened to Romney then, admitting he was misled. Now, for a senator to be misled is inexcusable. I was very disappointed when John Kyle teamed up with McCain on those 10 points. Solve our immigration laws, our illegal immigration problems. And I got a word from McCain. I hope I did anyway. I'm very vociferous when it comes to getting in contact with my senators.
Oh, I know, Arlen. I know you are.
They hear from me about 2 times a week.
God bless you.
And if I hear that guy go again, I'm sure. But what I'm getting at is at least half of those 10 points, and I think you really need to stress this, at least half of them, McCain did a flip on. Now, it's my contention, and I told his office, and I went to his hometown, his town hall meeting with Mitt Romney. And I told him, I said, I'm going to be very, very disappointed if you're reelected and you renege on one of those 10 points. But I also indicated to him I wouldn't doubt that you'll flop on those 5 that you flipped on to get with Kyle and sound real good for the purpose of your election campaign. I would hope you'd really play that up some way.
Well, Arlen, I think you've raised, first of all, I thank you not only for your service, but your ongoing vigilance to hold all elected officials to account, and I appreciate your correspondence, and I look forward, as your United States Senator, to being back, to having a lot of town halls like this, and hearing from you, good or bad, what I'm doing, because Miss Mary taught me a great lesson. And you all know it instinctively. Good Lord gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Mary's advice years ago was this: honey, listen, don't lecture. And that's what you're saying, Arlen. And to the point of that so-called 10-point plan, as I pointed out during Friday night's debate, this is why Arlen's instincts are so good. The 10-point plan has exactly 1 co-sponsor, Senator Kyle. Mr. McCain serves on the Homeland Security Committee, the Committee of Jurisdiction. If there was any seriousness of purpose, Chairman Lieberman would have held a markup session. They would be marking up that bill and voting on it to move it to the floor. The fact that they are not doing that tells you all you need to know. It is a political document. It is not a serious legislative project or a serious legislative document. What's more, that vaunted call for 6,000 troops, when you read the fine print, it's another 5 years away. So instead of lamenting the fact that we've gone through a decade after 9/11 and not put adequate forces on the border, under the McCain plan now, we'd wait another 5 years and still not have enough. But here's the other point. And I'm glad that John got back to having some town halls, and I appreciate he brings in folks from elsewhere. You know, it's very interesting here. If you got a letter from John back in April on this issue, after he gave the obligatory